Welcome to another exciting episode of ISU Impact, the radio show and podcast brought to you by the College of Arts and Letters. ISU Impact showcases the great work our students and faculty do together here in the great state of Idaho. I am Dean Kandi Turley-Ames, the host for the show, and today I have with me my very first ever repeat guest, Professor John Armstrong. Hi, John.
Hi, Kandi. Thanks for having me back.
It sounds like you've been a little busy. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, certainly. Quite busy. The commercial music program is taken off. We have a bunch of new students. We have this great collection of people. I'm coming back from sabbatical.
Yes.
So I'm week 3.
I think I saw you more on sabbatical, though, because you and I had lots of meetings.
There were still lights to keep on and whatnot. I'm
Yeah.
sure you understand to an nth degree. But yeah, the next couple of weeks are really exciting for us. And February is always kind of like a big month with Jazz Fest and guest artists and student projects getting going.
Well, good. And Jazz Fest is really what I want to talk about today, along with one of our student guests as well. But we'll start with you first. Tell me, when is Jazz Fest? When do we kick that off?
So Jazz Fest is always the second weekend in February, and guest artists come in Thursday or Friday. They have a rehearsal with our students, and then they always perform a gig on Friday night in town. I always like to do one off-campus event to get into the community. And this year the guest artists are performing at Station Square in Old Town. And then the Saturday is the big hullabaloo. There's an all-day festival where 11 to 13 regional high school ensembles come to Jensen. They work with the guest artists, and then we have a big concert at 7:30 p.m. on that Saturday night. So this will be Saturday, February 10th this year.
All right. And people can come on February 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, to Jensen Hall, the 7:30 concert. And if they want to see kind of like a more mellow, casual concert, then come to the Friday night on February 9th at Station Square.
Yeah, and a shout out to Station Square. They've been a great partner with you
awesome.
and the commercial music program overall. So we're really grateful for
Dennis
that.
Kleisters owns the building, and he's just really loves curating music and art and these kind of community events. And so we're just very grateful for him and Dave Morrison and Dan Sims and all the folks down there.
Well, I got to tell you, if you haven't been down to Station Square to see the students perform, I know you're also doing stuff on the first Friday, the Art Walk. Mm-hmm. It's transformative. I mean, I look at the space and I would have never thought that it could be what it is when you guys are up there performing and the lights, and it's amazing. Yeah,
the beauty salon's shut down for the day.
Yep.
And then the restaurant stays open, and then, it's a good hang.
So as we talk about Jazz Fest, how many years have we been doing Jazz Fest?
This is the 36th year
of
Jazz Fest.
I had no idea.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
36 years of Jazz Fest.
It actually preceded than my coming to ISU.
Right?
Yeah.
And
that's saying a lot, by the way.
And it is my 8th, I believe. This is my 8th Jazz Fest because there was one COVID cancellation. But since 2016, we've been doing it. And I always like to get a really awesome, dynamic jazz group coming in. And this year we have this just stellar pianist and composer based in Seattle named Marina Albero. And she's bringing a trio of Seattle-based musicians. And this band sounds amazing. And she plays a lot of like Afro-Cuban music and creative jazz. And she's like a really amazing performer and composer. And so you're going to hear her and her trio, and then they're going to play alongside all of our students in the ISU Big Band for that Saturday night concert. So we'll have 2 drum sets, 2 bass amps, 2 pianos, and then the whole big band all performing together. It's always a really fun night.
Yeah, I can't even imagine for the students to see and work with somebody of that caliber and have them come right here to Pocatello, Idaho.
Yeah, to me, that's my core philosophy as a teacher, is get students working with professionals right alongside, because there's nothing like being right next to a pro who's been doing this for a long time, who can get to that higher energy level and that kind of precision of musicianship and reach the audience the way that professional musicians can. There's no sentence any professor could say in a class that is more impactful than sitting 2 feet from a world-class musician like that and feeling that rocket ship take off.
Yep.
It's my favorite time of year.
Yeah, it is amazing. So just to kind of talk a little bit about the event itself for a moment, there are other jazz festivals in the state of Idaho, right? So what makes this one special?
So a typical jazz festival, you'll have a guest artist come and perform as the group. Like, so if we brought Marina in a traditional jazz festival, she would come and she would perform with her trio, and Then you would hire a bunch of regional educators, like people from Utah State and BYUI and CSI, to come and clinic jazz bands. So then like a high school would come, and then a professor from the region would listen to them and say like, oh, try your eighth notes a little shorter, or maybe let's tune that. Really impactful. And that's how every other jazz festival runs. And that's how this jazz festival used to run. But as I said about my core philosophy, I was thinking, well, how do we get them playing with them? Because for me, I went to school, I got some degrees, but my most impactful education was hanging out with professionals in the cities that I worked as a professional saxophonist. And I'm like, that's the real thing. So if we're going to invest all this money and resources in bringing these artists here with so much support from the college and from donors, it's like, okay, this is a really valuable thing. The way that I feel we can get the most out of that value is put them right next to the college students. And then recently I thought about doing the same with the high schoolers. So each year I will arrange music by the guest artists and give them out to the regional high schools who are going to play. So they learn the guest artist music. So they don't just play the same stuff they play all year. Now they're playing Marina Albero music. They have been for the last few months. And this year I actually got a student, Adam Red, to arrange one of the charts, which is a new wrinkle that I want to add.
Adam's amazing.
He's
too.
a great writer. In the future, getting students to help me arrange this stuff to give them that experience. So now these high schoolers have Marina Albero music. They're listening to a living, contemporary, dynamic artist. And then when they get to Jazz Fest during the day, during the festival portion, instead of someone just writing down comments, they're sitting right next to Marina Albero's trio.
Wow.
And so Marina Albero's trio, it's a lot to ask of them. So instead of getting regional professors to come, it's the trio, the guest artists themselves sit on stage, and we just throw M&Ms and coffee and pizza, whatever they need to get through the day. And they just go school after school. This year, 11 schools, give them some breaks, and they play the charts.
So they're going to work with 11 high schools, and those students are all going to get to play with our guest
with
performers.
The guest artists.
Wow.
And then because it's Jensen, Bill Stanton, who I'm so grateful for all the work he does, he pushes play and records. So at the end, we do a little mini recording session, and then I give that to the schools so they can show admin and the parents like, hey, here's us playing with the trio.
So I think that is what really makes this special, right? I mean, our students do get to work with a lot of amazing faculty from other institutions. We can certainly share that way. But much like many of the other events that we do on campus, I think about, the fact that we have the symphony that has community members in it and faculty who are sitting alongside our students who are up on that stage. I mean, it's that kind of mentorship, is that kind of relationship. And to think about the ways in which performing with the guest artist on stage with music you've been practicing. I mean, talk about inspiring. Yeah.
And for me, and not to go off on too much of a tangent, it also allows me to hire a different kind of musician. It gives me a little bit of more diversity because there's a lot of amazing musicians out there that maybe aren't professional teachers at institutions.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of person that tends to be hired for these things. Well, I can go out and hire professionals I've brought in guys from Oakland, California, or Los Angeles and Seattle and Portland, and people that don't necessarily have college teaching jobs and they're really polished with their teaching, but they know how to play and they know what it's like, that ancient tradition of sitting next to someone that doesn't know as much of them and bringing them along. So I've been able to bring a different kind of artist to the Jazz Fest these last 8 years with this new model.
That's wonderful. So you are also, in addition to directing and overseeing the Jazz Festival and that program, you're also the director of commercial music. So maybe for our listeners, how do these things go together? It's such a good question. And I'll try and do it in a nutshell and not talk. Okay, set the timer. I get 1 hour. Gotcha. For me, commercial music, all it means is it opens up all the doors. And it just allows anyone to make any music that they see in their heart. So I almost think of it as like jazz. In the way that I'm running these programs, jazz lives inside of commercial music. Jazz is one of the things you can do as a commercial musician. So if a great jazz musician like Ben Graham, who we have here, who's a wonderful jazz musician, he's a commercial music student. And what that allows him to do is not get too narrow in his focus. And I love jazz. I'm a jazz saxophonist. I've been a professional jazz musician. But me performing with soul and R&B and rock and every other kind of musicians, world musicians from West Africa, from India, that has broadened my sense and perspective of what music can be, which is this universal collection, this universal sound, this universal language, right? And so jazz is one dialect. And I want to build a culture here
where Ben Graham, a great jazz pianist, can work with heavy metal and hip hop musicians, and he can still make his own album, which will be his expression of jazz. It won't be narrow. I'm not going to push any confines on him. And within that commercial music, we don't have walls between the different artists. And I think of my students as artists. I'm like, what kind of art do you want to make here? How can I facilitate that? But the motivation is intrinsic within them to put those groups together and to rehearse it. And it's my and the other professors' job to polish it and shape it and make sure it's at a certain professional level. But jazz should be just as valid as, scream rock and hip hop and soul and whatever is in my students' hearts. That's just as important to me.
Okay. So before we talk to Ben, because I am excited to hear about Ben's role with the festival and how he views it from a student perspective, you do have a couple of incredibly generous sponsors.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe do a shout out for them
Absolutely.
real quick?
So starting with Gallo Medina, who has been just so generous to the commercial music program and the studio, and now this Jazz Fest, just so grateful for his donation to this. It is just really going to allow us to level up with this festival. And Doris Brighton has offered support, and she's just been a world-class donor for years and years across the college, from what I understand.
Yep, across the university, to be honest.
Actually, her grandson took my audio mixing and production class.
Oh, really?
And he's an amazing musician as well. So I've
Is that the one that lives up in the Pullman area?
Yeah, he lives in Pullman.
Yep.
And then Piano Gallery donates in kind a lot of drum sets and amplifiers and cables, which is just imperative. It allows us to run the festival and let the high school kids have these drum sets and these instruments to play on.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to them.
So a heartfelt thank you to the Gallo Medina family, to Doris Brighton, to the
Piano Gallery.
The Piano Gallery. Yeah. We could not do this without that partnership.
Absolutely not. And that's just so helpful. And thank you, Kandi, for facilitating these relationships over the years. And it's just such an important part.
So one more quick question for you is, what is your goal for Jazz Fest going forward? I mean, if you could, what is your vision? Share your vision with this audience.
It is such a good question. I think about this a lot. So this new model where they're performing with the high schools, this is technically only the third year of that particular model.
Okay.
And so I want to continue to help educate specifically the high school band directors in the area. And they're getting it. They're really understanding how valuable that is. And I want those experiences to seep into the high schools. And we're starting to see it. We have a couple freshmen this year who did this model the last 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And now they're so excited to be on the college end of it. But they talk about how impactful that is. So seeing that kind of organically grow and seep into the high school music cultures that are around here, and having those charts that I arrange be regular performances, so they could still play it 3 years from now. They can play the thing that they performed alongside Corey Christiansen last year or Marina this year. And so that just seeps into the culture. Moving forward, I wonder how this festival could interface with the commercial music program more. And then sometimes I think this is a really good opportunity to bring in some more artists who are trained in world music traditions. Could I bring in some West African drumming musicians? Could I bring in some Indian musicians and give more like radical new perspectives on how to make music and bring that to Southeast Idaho? So I think about the Jazz Fest as this way to really communicate with the schools, interface with the community, and who can I bring to Southeast Idaho in order to play these other kinds of music that wouldn't normally come to Pocatello otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and I want to, really compliment you and thank you, because I really do believe what you are building here, whether it's through the commercial music program and with the Jazz Festival, is really changing our community. I mean, I think I've mentioned to you, I've been downtown and I've seen students playing in small groups, and I see their instrument cases and they have these ISU stickers on them, right? And I call you and I say, John, your students are performing down here. They're awesome. And you're like, where are you at? You're like, oh no, I think that's Century High School.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly,
Highland High School. Right. And I'm like, my heart just is so warm because we really are creating the kind of community and culture that I think, we really all want to live in. I mean, I really do believe that Pocatello is this amazing place.
Absolutely.
And music is one of those things, like the performing arts in general, that can bring that community together.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And I completely agree. And what we're starting to see now that I've been here long enough is, and Ben's actually a good example. I knew him when you were in 8th grade.
Sophomore year.
Sophomore year. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And so like having these relationships with high schoolers, and they don't all come to ISU, but the fact that we can reach out to these schools, these high schools, and give these young people these experiences, and whatever they do with those experiences, I think those are intrinsic inside of them. And then, like you said, bringing that to the community, that's just so important to me.
Yeah, yeah. So we do have Ben with us, Ben Graham. And Ben, you are in what year of school?
I'm in my second year.
So are you considered sophomore then?
I am a sophomore, yeah.
Okay, all right. And where are you from originally?
So I am from Boise.
Okay.
That's where my folks live. Originally from Northwest Washington State.
Okay.
So I grew up there, and then just before high school, I moved to Boise, and then I met Justin Nielsen, who is a very talented Boise-based jazz pianist, who was my teacher all throughout high school. And then that's how I met Armstrong, is through Justin, and it was this really cool thing that happened. So yeah, I'm originally from north of Seattle area.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
yeah.
So what do you think about the guest artists that are coming here for Jazz Fest?
Well, I have
Marina,
had
right? Am I saying that correctly?
Marina
Okay.
Albero. Yes, I've really enjoyed learning her music. I've listened to some YouTube videos I found of her playing with her trio and even quintet sometimes. It's super cool to see. Her technical style is insane. She's super technically proficient, and her style is very, like, it's, John said, like Afro-Cuban influence, and I can see a lot of like Latin influence in her playing as well. I can hear it. And so I've had a blast learning it, and I'm really excited to start playing it.
Yeah.
To play it.
And she's a pianist,
Mhm.
and you are a pianist.
I am a pianist,
And
yeah.
you also play a number of other instruments as well.
A few.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe mention a couple?
Yeah, no. So I actually started, my first instrument that I started to learn how to play was guitar. So I can play some campfire songs on guitar. I enjoy percussion, so I enjoy messing around on the drum set some, and I picked up the bass last semester for a commercial music group that I was a part of, and then just other various types of percussion, shakers, and other things like that.
Okay.
So, and I'm in choir too, so I guess I can sing a little bit.
Yeah, excellent. So you mentioned that you're from, at least most recently, Boise.
Yeah.
What brought you to ISU?
It's a really cool story, actually. I would say about sophomore year, before I had even decided if college was an option, I went to this Kobe Watkins Group-Tet gig in the Boise area. And John actually wasn't at this one. There was a sub that came in and played guitar instead of saxophone, but it was the first time I'd ever been to a live jazz gig before. And my former instructor, Justin Nielsen, he messaged me and he said, "You don't want to miss this. It's going to change your life." And so I'm like, okay, I trust your word. I'm going to come to this gig. And so we go to the gig, and like, believe it or not, like, I was crying by the end of it. Like, it was the most spiritual experience I've ever had, like one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had in my life. And just that fire and passion I had for that music, I had never felt before, and I knew that I was just hooked, and I wanted it really bad. And so about a year later, there was another Kobe Watkins Group-Tet gig, and this time John was there, and he was playing in it, and it was kind of the same set of music. But this time I was like, okay, I want to figure out how can I do something like this? Like, how can I be involved? I just knew I wanted that. And so I talked to John, and I'm like, so I don't really know what I want to do for college. And I wanted to know where he taught. And he's like, oh, I teach at ISU. And like, we have this commercial music program I'm working on, and I think it'd be really cool if you would check it out. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I still don't really know what I want to do for college, but I'll consider it. And so some time passes, and I started thinking of, well, maybe I'll just go to CWI to get some generals out of the way first, and then maybe I'll do, 2 years, my latter 2 years at ISU. And so I remember talking to John about that and just kind of telling him, like, this is kind of an idea of what I want to do. And then one day he just said, hey, I'm going to give you a phone call. And so I'm like, okay. And so I was a little nervous. I'm like, well, what does he want to tell me? And so basically, through a series of emails and a phone call, he had convinced me that it was not only going to be cheaper, but it was going to be more beneficial to my musical career if I were to go to ISU for the full 4 years in the commercial music program. And that had me sold, because it told me that he put in so much effort to show me how special this program is and how invested he is in my own talent. I'm like, if there's someone who cares that much about my own talent and about my success, why wouldn't I want to go to this school?
Yeah.
And so ultimately that was the deciding factor. I was a little nervous because, I didn't like the idea of moving 3.5 hours away from home. I'm kind of a homebody. And so I didn't like that idea very much. But as soon as I know that there's going to be like-minded people at the school that I can collaborate with, that's also a sense of home for me. And so I decided to give it a shot, and it's been an amazing experience ever since.
So you kind of hinted, but any regrets?
No.
No
regrets at all.
Can I love it here. And 2 details to that story.
I know. I'm probably missing some details.
Just if I may, Ben released an album in high school. That's very wonderful. And I listened to it, and Adam Red they were good friends from Boise, and he was like, I asked Adam for your number. I was like, I want to call Ben and talk to you about his album, which was remarkable and incredible. But I also mentioned like, hey, let's talk about some of like the technical aspects of recording and mixing and mastering. And I just kind of called you to talk about your record and did mention that we have those things here and like those kinds of skill sets. Right. And the other thing is when you decided to come here, it was to me really heartwarming. Your parents wanted to meet me.
Yeah.
Because you're like, why is Ben coming to Pocatello? Yeah. But I was really wonderful to meet your parents. You guys were here for a concert of some kind.
Yeah, it was some sort of event.
Bengal Day or something like that.
It was Bengal Visit Day, I think, yeah.
So it was great to meet them.
Yeah.
And I just have to say, I the music program at ISU is very special, commercial music special, but exactly what you've described as a faculty member in terms of your commitment to students and seeking them out and supporting them and finding a way to make sure they have what they need here. I have to tell you, that has been my experience at Idaho State University for 27, 28 years that I've been here. It is amazing to me the extent to which we are committed to our students. And everybody says that, and I'm sure every institution says that, but this kind of story I don't hear everywhere else. So I really want to thank you both for sharing that. And Ben, thanks to you and your parents for trusting Professor Armstrong over here.
Yeah. I mean, Armstrong was recommended strongly by my teacher, Justin. And so, like Justin said, if you're going to go anywhere for school, go here. Like you can apply to Berkeley, you can apply to Eastman, you can apply to Juilliard. Go big, but if you're gonna start off somewhere small, start somewhere where there's gonna be something huge one day, and that is definitely ISU. So.
Well, and just a shout out. So bragging as the dean of the college is we have had students who've come from this program who are at Juilliard, who are in those places you just described, and so we are part of their path. We're part of their story. And it's an honor to be able to work with those students and help them, move forward and do what makes them happy, right? Okay, so back to Jazz Fest before I get too teary here. It's been one of those weeks. From a student perspective, what does it mean to you, besides the fact that, this is great, you're going to play with an artist, what does it mean to you to have the experience of Jazz Fest? I mean, several days, you're going to have high school students here. What does it mean from the student perspective?
I think it's an incredible opportunity to get to play with some real professionals and to get that experience, to learn from them, to glean whatever you can from the whole experience. And I think it's really cool that high schoolers get to experience that same thing.
It's amazing.
It's like, if I was in high school, if I had known about this, I would have been here every single year. And so I think to me, it's really special that we're given this, experience and this opportunity to just straight up learn as much as we can from these incredible professionals.
So how many face-to-face hours do you think your guest artists end up having with either high school students or college students when they're here? Oh, man.
I mean, so we do an hour-long rehearsal on Friday.
Okay.
And then there's the 2-hour gig, which that's face-to-face, I mean, an intimate environment. And then on that Saturday, 9 to 5 with like a lunch break.
Wow.
I put some 10-minute breaks in there, and like I said, I'll throw M&Ms
a few M&Ms.
But yeah, that's 11 bands. They all get a half hour with them each, which is long enough to really like do a thing and then do a little recording at the end. And so, that's 5.5 hours with the high schools, and then they do the concert.
And will they work at the high schools on stage at Jensen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times and watched. It's pretty amazing.
We just run them through, and exactly.
Yep.
And so then they get to be on stage Jensen doing that as well, which is just such a world-class stage.
Yeah. okay, we're getting close to running out of time. I always go over, so I'll try not to. But if there was one thing you want our listeners to know about Jazz Fest, a call to action. Do you want them to come? Do you want them to support it? What do we need our listeners to do so that we can continue to create these kind of experiences for our students?
I think show up. I think that's exactly right. I think the people that show up on the Friday night gig to get that like intimate jazz club night environment, and it's like, that's a real fun thing. And then you show up on Saturday and then it's just this heavy energy. I mean, like every time after Jazz Fest, it's such a party. Everyone leaves floating on cloud nine. So come experience that. Like we've cultivated a really beautiful thing. And every year I also think about the Jazz Fest artists having a great time. As much as I work them on Saturday, every single jazz artist like gives me this big hug at the end of the night. They're like, I've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah. So Friday night, Station Square, what time?
7 to 9.
And
free.
that's
free. Yeah.
Free. Absolutely free.
Just show up and hang, eat some food at Grandma's Pantry.
Okay. And then on Saturday at Jensen.
7:30 ticketed event. Jensen. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Ben, what else do you want our listeners to know?
I'd just say ditto. Like show up and, learn as much as you can from the experience, and definitely go listen to Marina Albero's full-length deluxe edition album if you want to spend that much time. There's a bunch of tracks on her album, and I think it's called I forget the name of her.
A Life Soundtrack. A Life Soundtrack.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's an incredible record.
3.
So in preparation for the festival, listen to our record.
And they can do that online, right?
Yeah, anywhere online. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both so very much. Thank you for talking about the commercial music program. Thank you, Ben, for coming to ISU.
Of course.
And thank you both for working on Jazz Fest and making it a success for our community. So
thanks for having us, Kandi.
Thank you, Kandi.
You bet. So this is a wrap. I want to thank our listeners for joining us for another episode of ISU Impact. And we hope that you will tune in again to hear more about the great work that our faculty and students are doing together. God bless. That one's for Tara.
Thanks, Kandi.